Good morning, everybody. Welcome into Denver Sports Coffee Break presented by Bath Fitter. We hope you all are having a wonderful Wednesday. Is that what day it is? I can't even remember anymore. Luckily, it's just the day after a Nuggets win as they advance. We got James Merrill, Jake Shapiro hanging out with you for a little bit. Andrew Mason, and hopefully D-Max also going to hang out with us for just a smidge. But gentlemen, the Nuggets get it done. A gentleman's sweep, but it was closer than I think a lot of us were hoping for, James.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to warn everybody that I thought it was going to be closer. I think we saw some things, in game 3 and game 4 in Minnesota. The Timberwolves found a little bit of a formula for how to deal with the Nuggets, and that wasn't just going to change because they came back here. So I thought it would be a little more low scoring than it was, but I thought it would be a tight game, and it turned out to be. Nuggets have some things they need to fix before they get to that Phoenix series because, like I say, the Timberwolves found some solutions, particularly they would just pick up Jamal Murray no matter where he was on the court. I mean, they were on him and pressing him even before he got across midcourt. That threw the Nuggets offense off. That made him have to take a lot of tough, bad shots. That is something the Nuggets are going to have to figure out prior to the Sun series.
Yep.
Yeah, as James was referencing, the Nuggets were getting into their offense very quickly earlier in the Timberwolves series. Later on, Nickeil Alexander-Walker is doing a really good job on Jamal Murray, forcing the Nuggets offense to slow down, and that didn't affect Jamal last night. Jamal solved Nickeil Alexander-Walker last night. However, the rest of the Nuggets still had to take a lot of tough shots. There's a reason why their shooting percentage was low. It wasn't just that they had a bad shooting night. They had a bad shooting night, and the Timberwolves did a good job. But if the Nuggets had a good shooting night, it would have been a blowout. It was the third time in a row that the Nuggets have won a postseason game while allowing their opponent to shoot 50 or better percent from the field. It was only the third time in history that the Nuggets have won a playoff game while shooting under 40% when their opponent shot 50%. So that was a really, really hard way to win a basketball game. Impressive, but the Timberwolves are not the caliber of team that the Nuggets are going to be facing moving forward.
And that's, I think, what's kind of scary, too, is you're like, all right, the Suns are the Suns. Like, I think it's going to be a 7-game series. We watched what they were able to do when it came down to, the Clippers. Of course, we all heard about the Kawhi Leonard news this morning. Torn meniscus. That's unfortunate. But it's just like, all right, here we go. Buckle up, everybody, because this is where it's actually going to get intense. And because we didn't get the blowouts I think a lot of us were expecting when it came to the Timberwolves, that's where you're like, oh boy, here we go for this series, James.
Yeah, I think, though, we all kind of fell into the trap of, the Nuggets are a better team than the Timberwolves, and hey, they're at home. This ain't the regular season, right? When teams are doing load management and kind of, tapping out even mentally a little bit of like, oh my gosh, this is the 4th game and on a 5-game road trip and we're at altitude and it's when every moment counts, every game counts, every possession counts. Teams, it's a different proposition, and it's game 5. So you've seen what the Nuggets are going to do against you. You make adjustments. Like, that's the part of it I think we all kind of underestimate. I didn't think the Nuggets did a particularly good job of adjusting to the adjustments. I just didn't. They never were able to come up with an answer really for Anthony Edwards. I guess in the second half last night, doubling him and making him get the ball out of his hands was a good adjustment and leaving other guys open. But offensively, they don't run plays for Michael Porter Jr. They didn't figure out a way of, hey, they're picking up Jamal Murray nearly full court here and making us get into our offense at 13, 14 seconds. Yeah. They got to make some adjustments to that because I expect that's exactly what Monty Williams and the Suns are going to do. Why would you not? You watch the last couple of games of this series on tape. That's exactly what you would break out if you were the Suns, and that would be how you try and defend the Nuggets.
The whole MPJ situation is so weird to me because, he was obviously cold in the beginning of the game, and then, of course, he hits a big 3. But it just seems like there's not a whole lot of plays that run through him, which is so surprising considering he is literally the 3rd best player on this team. Like, I don't understand why we're not seeing more movement when it comes to MPJ.
Well, they essentially run the 2-man game every possession.
Yeah.
Like, you watch them, especially late, it is Jokic and Murray, pick and roll, top of the key. It is the same thing over and over and over again.
Yep.
And MPJ essentially just stands at the 3-point line, waits for somebody to have to come help and get the kick out. all right, if he's hitting his jump shot, that's great. But otherwise, there's not a lot going on. People give him a hard time of, oh, he just stands around. That's what he's supposed to do when they're playing two-man game. Otherwise, he's cutting through the lane and getting in the way. They need to mix it up a little bit. They need to get a little bit more creative. They need to get other people involved. There's two other things that we saw, two other players that I think got exposed a little bit in this series. The Timberwolves essentially dared Aaron Gordon to shoot.
Yep.
Didn't even guard him. And when Jeff Green was on the floor, it was the exact same thing.
Yep.
So that was troublesome. And then last night, and Jake, I saw your tweet about this, and I thought you nailed it. I think it was early in the fourth quarter when the Nuggets had Jokic out, and they went small against Gobert and Cat. Like, how is that going to work? I mean, Gobert all of a sudden looked like an all-star center again offensively during that sequence. So the Nuggets, DeAndre Ayton, gives Jokic a little bit of fits, but they're going to have to figure something else out as well of, hey, how do we not just get attacked at the rim when Jokic is out of the game?
MPJ was bad on offense and bad on defense until that timeout with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And to be honest, he was not set up to succeed in that stint on defense, which is what I was referencing. MPJ should not be guarding Rudy Gobert. That's just not a matchup that's going to be favorable towards him. But to your guys' point, after a 3-for-3 last night and 20 shot attempts so far in the fourth quarter of this Nuggets playoff run, 5 games, MPJ's shot effectiveness, his effective field goal percentage is 92.5%. That is the third best effective field goal percentage with a minimum of 20 shots in a playoff run of all time. Like, MPJ needs the ball more.
That's why he's fourth quarter Porter.
Oh, well, that's a lovely face for Jake to be frozen on. We
need to make that stick. Fourth quarter Porter. I mean, that's a great stat that Jake had there. That's amazing. Third best of all time. Yep. Now, listen, when you have to add all these caveats, right, of like, oh, it's shooting in the fourth quarter of games of more than 20 shots. Like, okay, all right, well, you can narrow it down to where you're going to be, you can make any number work, but he has been very good in the fourth quarter. He has been clutch. He got open looks early in the game, Rachel. He did. He just couldn't hit them. But it is sort of those stagnant looks, right, where he's just standing there. He's doing nothing. The ball isn't in his hands. And then all of a sudden he's expected to just hit a shot. I think it's a bad offense. I'm not saying they need to go away from the two-man game. That's clearly their bread and butter, but they have to have some other things. They have to mix it up. Save for doubling Anthony Edwards last night. I can't really think of a thing the Nuggets did in this series where I was like, ooh, that's a good adjustment. They just didn't. They just, hey, we got more talent. We're a better team. We got home court advantage. We're going to roll out and win. It worked out, and great. Let's celebrate. Let's move on. But the reality of it is you got to look at it and say, okay, what lessons have to be learned if you're going to beat the Suns, if you're going to beat the Lakers or the Warriors or whoever, or the Kings, whoever gets out of that? Are you going to beat somebody from the East? Like, let's not just say, hey, they won and there's nothing to look at here. I think there are some concerns, and I think there are some things that Michael Malone needs to address.
I think, too, it was a lot of, we're just going to play our game because we are the better team, so, like, there's no need for adjustments. But I kind of think, too, I don't want to say they overlooked the Timberwolves, but Jamal Murray had a quote yesterday in the press conference following of, like, I don't want to give too much away as, like, hey, we have another game plan for the Suns. And obviously they do. Like, that's how playoffs work. There's different game plans. But it just felt very much like we're playing our game plan. We're the better team no matter what against the Timberwolves. And we're almost preparing a little bit for the next team, which I'm assuming they just assumed was going to be the Suns.
Yeah, and look, if that's how it turns out to be, then great. That was smart, right? They played a little possum. If you can win in advance playing vanilla and not show your hand, okay. But the funny part of that is they're moving into a 7-game series. That whatever their surprise for the Suns is, might catch them in game 1, right? Maybe just a half, maybe just a quarter. Like, it seems kind of silly that you would do that. I think it makes more sense in football where it's a one and done, right? Because if you catch somebody by surprise, they don't really have time to adjust to it. In a 7-game series, I don't know that I'm buying that. But we'll see. We'll see if they come out on Saturday night and have some different looks for Phoenix. Then that will prove accurate, not just hey, here's how we explain away our lackluster performance. Last night was kind of a lackluster performance. Let's just be honest. It was, especially in the first quarter, but they pulled it out. It's great. They advanced. It's survive and advance, and they survived last night. There's nothing wrong with that.
The Nuggets are definitely holding on to a couple cards up their sleeve, by the way. They just are. You can disagree with them wanting to or why they would be doing that, but there's a couple things, and I can just give you a couple. One, the hard double trap of Anthony Edwards that we saw towards the end of that game. That's something they didn't want to necessarily break out, I think, in that series because they want to show it against the better players, and they wanted to get throughout that series without using it. They also, I think, wanted to get through that series without Nikola Jokic really shooting three-pointers, which he didn't do until games 4 and 5. The third thing they didn't want to really show in the Timberwolves series, which they didn't, except for a little bit last night and a little bit in game 1, was a lineup where Michael Porter Jr. is actually the power forward, because that matchup's going to be better for the Suns series than the Timberwolves series based on the bigs that they have. So there's a couple things that the Nuggets are holding on to.
Yeah, and listen, I think those are all accurate. My point is, none of us think Monty Williams would have taken 5 games to figure that out.
Yeah.
Hell, he'd figure it out in the first half. Like, come on. I mean, it's not as though we're splitting the atom here.
When you both look at the Suns, who worries you the most? Because Devin Booker has been fantastic, and I feel like we haven't seen the full potential of KD yet, which can be a little scary.
Yeah, I mean, look, Kevin Durant's a top 10 player of all time. Mm-hmm. So if he's not the number one guy that worries you, I'd want to hear the compelling case against it. Devin Booker's a great player. Chris Paul, I know he gets a lot of criticism for not winning a title, not being to a final, but that guy is savvy. He knows how to work the officials. He knows how to get calls. And DeAndre Ayton is a force inside. They're going to be a tough matchup. The one thing I think the Nuggets got a little bit exposed for is they just don't have anybody that's a jet that can beat you off the dribble, right? Like, that's why they're able to pick Jamal Murray up 35 feet from the hoop. Because if he could blow by guys, well, now you're playing 5-on-4 and teams won't do it. They don't. They have the Nuggets have a bit of a quickness issue. I don't think they have an answer for that. Like, Bruce Brown coming off the bench isn't really that guy. Like, they don't have that speed that maybe you could use to exploit Chris Paul, who's, getting up there in years. The Nuggets just don't have that.
Well, I'm still throwing confetti from round 1. My boy Enos hooked it up, guys. Really went all out. Throw out all at the stops. He was so happy yesterday when I ran into him. So, East Stanley, thank you. But, yeah, guys, the Suns, they don't have that speed either, James. Like, Chris Paul is a slow player. Devin Booker is methodical. Kevin Durant is methodical. To answer your question, Rachel, Devin Booker is a heck of a player, awesome all-star guy. Yep. Kevin Durant is maybe the greatest scorer in NBA history. It's right there. You can make a case for him. He is unguardable in the same way MPJ is. They're 6'11", and they've got that shot that's really high up. So Durant is the guy that should scare everybody. Mm-hmm. But the Nuggets actually match up with the Suns better right now than they did before the trade. And the reason is Nikola Jokic, why he struggled against the Suns 2 playoff runs ago was Jay Crowder, Cam Johnson, and Mikal Bridges used their long wingspans to get into the lanes, the passing lanes, and they played this shrink-the-floor defense, and the Nuggets didn't have any shooting. So the Suns effectively just put the Nuggets offense through the mud. All of those players I mentioned are gone because of the Kevin Durant trade. So if the Nuggets can hold Kevin Durant to 30 points, Devin Booker to 30 points, Chris Paul scores 20, that's 80, DeAndre Ayton gets 15, that's 95. Where are those other 15 to 25 points coming from to win 110 to 120? So I think the Nuggets actually match up very well against the Suns. James is right. There are some deficiencies on the Nuggets that they can't exploit the Suns. But the Suns don't get to the rim on offense, and the Nuggets get to the paint, and the Suns don't have any paint protection. So the Nuggets can pound the paint and own the paint in this series, Whereas for the Suns, it's going to come down to can they make their jump shots. But something that I think is going to have a huge effect on this series that happened last night, and you can read about it on denversports.com, it's going to be 19 days from today till the end of the Suns series. And when you have a team on the other side in the Suns who only really plays 6 guys a night and they're all older, all of that rest between games is going to greatly benefit the Suns.
Go ahead, James.
Well, I think a little rest for the Nuggets won't hurt either. I mean, Nikola Jokic clearly, he's 8 of 29 last night. Like, have you ever seen him shoot that badly? And he's got his wrist taped. He's got ice on it on the bench. He's got ice on it in the locker room. Clearly, he's not 100%. So I get what you're saying. That does help the team that only plays 6. And look, all of what you said is true. And I don't think it's a terrible matchup for the Nuggets by any means. But, and this is sort of stating the obvious, the first 2 games of the series, the Nuggets have to hold home court. I feel like if they lose one of these and they go down to Phoenix 1-1, I don't feel very good about them going down into that building and winning a game that they have to win.
Yep.
If they're up 2-0, then all of a sudden we can start talking about, hey, do we want to buy some plane tickets and go down and be Denver in 4 guy? Right? Like, now how fun would that be 2 years later to go be Nuggets in 4? Got to get through the first 2 as well, but that's already in my head. Anytime I can go troll Phoenix fans, sign me up.
Denver Sports road trip down there. I love the idea of it. Well, maybe I think we're all probably playing people over road trip people, but you get the point.
So the Suns, by the way, since the Kevin Durant trade in games that he plays, are 14-1. The one loss they had was the playoff game where Kawhi Leonard went off. So the Suns have been good with these guys. The thing is, a lot of those games have been flimsy, even in the playoffs without Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. The Nuggets, they beat the Nuggets twice since the trade. Both those games Nikola Jokic didn't play in. So this is going to be the first time we really get to see the Suns face some adversity, which will be interesting.
Yeah, and you mentioned those 2 Nuggets games. Those were clearly, hey, we've got everything wrapped up and, let's give some guys some rest. But it was also, all right, we're going to play this team in the playoffs. Let's not tip our hand at all. I buy that more than they weren't tipping their hand in the Minnesota series. But if you combine the 2, maybe it was a little bit, hey, we're thinking ahead. Okay, you can convince me on that one.
Well, I think we're all looking forward to Saturday night game 1. I think this is going to be a really fun series. There might be some highs and there might be some lows, but at the end of the day, it's going to be fun for sure. Jake, thanks so much for hanging out with us for a little bit this morning. We got to talk about the Colorado Avalanche. So first comment this morning is Makar's suspension is ridiculous. Cale Makar obviously gets suspended for his hit. I didn't think it was a dirty hit, James. D-Mac disagreed with me. He thought it was extremely dirty, very unlike Cale Makar. What was your take on it?
I'm with D-Mac. I know It's not a popular take in this town, but, I heard Schlereth and Evans talking about it this morning, and they were saying, hey, he didn't know where the puck was. Like, watching the game, I heard the whistle, and I couldn't believe he drilled him into the boards that much after the play. Like, it was, to me, it was clear. It was obvious. I was shocked they changed it from a major to a minor. I was.
Well, that's the other part of it, too, where you're like, all right, the on-ice refs are obviously saying it's not that big a deal, and then for the league to turn around and say, hey, no, that's a suspension. Like, that's pretty crazy. That makes their referees look very stupid.
I'm with you on that. That's the odd part about it. If you change it from a major to a minor in the game, why is it now all of a sudden being ramped back up into a big deal? 100% agree with you on that. That's inconsistent. That's weird. Had they just kept it a major, which they probably should have, then I think there'd be less controversy here. Mm-hmm. I do think there's one other piece at play here is, hey, McCann's going to miss the game. You knocked him out. Yeah. I think it's a little bit of the league going, okay, then we're going to even it up. Neither one of you plays. That's not how decisions should be made. It's not. It's either dirty or suspension worthy based on what happened, not on the result. But let's just all be realistic. It's human beings making these decisions, and I think that plays into it. I think if McCann had been fine, right, if he'd gotten up, skated to the bench, come back in on his next shift, there's no suspension. It's a 2-minute minor. We're not talking about it. So I just think the reality of it is that him being knocked out of the game, we'll see when he's back, is why Makar got the 1-game suspension. But I think it's a hard thing to complain about if you're an Avs fan. Mm-hmm. If it went the other way, if somebody hit an Avs player that way, if they hit McKinnon that way after the whistle, and he was out tonight with a concussion, come on, we'd be throwing up our arms, we'd be booing that guy. Like, let's just be fair. I'm all for being a homer. I'm all for being an Avs guy. I'm all for looking at it through burgundy colored glasses. But I think we got to be fair about it too.
It's an eye for an eye situation. And
Yeah.
your point is very good of if that was McKinnon, we'd all be furious and we'd all be like, well, there goes the series. It's all over. But now you do have it. It's fared out a little bit. Can the Avs win without Makar? Because they haven't been very great defensively, especially early on in these games. And now you lose your second best player. I would say Makar is probably your second best player in this series so far. Well, Mako, no, third. I'm going third.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's at some point you hit that tipping point where you've lost too many guys, right? And if you start to compare what this team is right now versus the team that hoisted the cup, it's night and day.
Yeah.
And even in this series, it is essentially has been Mikko Rantanen, Nathan McKinnon, and who else, right? Like if those two guys weren't carrying him, heck, they might have got swept. I mean,
Yeah.
it just nobody else has shown up, and people don't like to hear this, but part of the reason you had the opportunity to have unsung heroes last year is, and I know Darren Helm has been injured, but guys like Helm and Manson, they were playing the role of 10th, 11th, 12th guy.
Yeah.
Now when you move them up and they got to be 5th, 6th, or 7th guy, like they're just not ready for that. They're not that good a player. But when they have that much talent around them, when they're playing against the other team's 10th, 11th, 12th guy, they're a lot better than those guys.
Yeah.
When they're playing against the other team's 5th, 6th, and 7th guy, or whatever. You get what I'm saying in terms of the numbers.
Yep.
It just doesn't. The matchup doesn't work. So listen, can they beat the Kraken tonight? Yeah, but find me a formula where they're going to win tonight where it's not McKinnon and Rantanen. I have a hard time coming up with one.
I am so nervous about this series because, I think personally the Kraken have absolutely dominated this entire series for what they're supposed to be compared to the Colorado Avalanche. I think they have shown up every single day and they have been so physical against the Avalanche team that they were just not expecting it. It's like watching a race where you're just trying to hurry up and catch up with the other person because you're not sure what's going to happen. And I know the Avs have had their moments for sure. You got to give a lot of credit to Mikko, but it just felt like every single time, even if they were ahead, they were still trying to catch up with the pace of the game. And that's what's scary for this Avalanche team.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, Scrappy Will Peterson makes an interesting point, though, when he says, look, if the Avs get a goal there in the first 2-3 minutes of overtime when they had a ton of opportunities, they're up 3-1 and nobody's nervous. Fair, but they didn't get it. They didn't. And then it turned into Josh Manson getting beat and having to, dive at a guy and trip him, and all of a sudden it's a power play in overtime for Seattle, and now you're in a 2-2 dogfight. I tend to lean toward your side of this. I just don't think they've played particularly well. Game 3 they actually did. It was 18 seconds where the Kraken scored 2 goals. Otherwise, that was kind of domination. But it was Mikko Rantanen and Nathan McKinnon who played well, and Kale Makar. Who else has had a big moment? Like last year, we had all these unsung heroes and all these guys who stepped up and had their moment.
Yep.
Who has done? I know it's only been 4 games, but who has done that? Who's had a play where you're like, oh my God, did you see him come out of the box right at the end of the power play and it was a dart down the ice and he took the pass and got a goal? Like, who's had those moments? We had half a dozen of those last year. They're just not happening.
Well, here's the other problem and the big mystery that everyone is still trying to figure out. Where is Val Nichushkin? Because that's your other guy. That's the other guy who's had a big moment in this playoff series, and yet we don't know where he is. The last update we have is Jared Bednar saying yesterday that it would be unbelievable if Nichushkin returned this series. And I feel like we have not heard anything else, James.
Now, I'm curious. I've only read the Jared Bednar comment of unbelievable. Have you heard it?
I have not heard it. I can't find it anywhere, but that's what's been put out there everywhere. So
I'm with you, but when you read it, it's like it makes it sound like we're not expecting him back. It would be a miracle if he returned. That's how it's positioned. But it could be like if they said, "Hey, do you think you would get me or Val back?" Like that'd be unbelievable. Like that'd be awesome. Like not as it's impossible, but like it would be great. Like there's two ways to read it.
Yeah.
Without hearing it, I don't know. So I'm just trying to provide a little bit of hope here of maybe that's what he meant of like, God, that'd be great. Woo, that'd be awesome. That'd be unbelievable if that happened. It'd be unbelievable if I won the lottery. Well, you can apply that both ways, right? It'd be awesome, and that's pretty far fetched. I'm not sure which one he meant here. But listen, the situation is weird, and the fact that the Avs haven't said anything about it makes us go down, rabbit holes of theories and trying to figure out what's going on.
Yep.
I just believe it's got to be something fairly severe for a guy to disappear the day of a game, go to the airport, and fly off to places unknown, and then miss game 4, potentially miss game 5. Like if you start trying to just come up with theories, Rachel, of why that would happen, the report came out yesterday. It was an alcohol-related incident. Sorry, alcohol-related incident, call me cynical, but a team is giving you some coffee, putting you in a cold shower, and saying, hey, we got a game in a few hours, let's go.
Yep.
That's just what I believe is happening. I don't think they put him on a plane, send him to wherever, and we never hear from him again for an alcohol-related incident. I'm not trying to minimize it, but that just doesn't compute in my brain. My experience of how professional sports operate in the postseason, maybe if it's a January game on a Tuesday in Seattle, they send his butt home for an alcohol-related incident. But this doesn't add up to me at all.
No, I'm with you. And we've all heard the stories of now former players who talk about, the things that they've done before games or after games. And let's just be honest. They live very different lives than the normal muggles, as D-Mac would call it, of you and I. It's very different. So the fact that they just shipped him off during the playoffs, that's the weird part. And everyone's like, okay, well, what if there's some sort of police report and all sorts of stuff with him getting in trouble? Well, then he can't leave the state, right?
Exactly.
If something's going on like that where you're in trouble with the law, you're not allowed to leave the state. So the fact that he was shipped off, that's what's weird. And I know D-Mac's trying to get answers down at Ball Arena, so who knows? But it's very weird that it's been radio silence when it came to essentially the Avs, I would say, 4th best player.
Well, yeah, and the other part of it is, look, I know teams don't want bad press. They don't. Mm-hmm. They don't want bad things to happen. For sure. But typically speaking, it's going to come out anyway, and they're usually more forthcoming, right? Like some of the famous examples are Eugene Robinson got arrested for being with a prostitute the night before Super Bowl 33. Yeah. My point, he played in the game, right? Yeah. They didn't say, hey, you're not going to be there. He played, and everybody knew the story. There was a Raiders offensive lineman, I think his last name was Barrett. I apologize, I'm blanking on it, who, when they played the Bucs in the Super Bowl, I think it was in San Diego, he just disappeared, and it wound up coming out that he went to Tijuana and had a bender, and sad story. He did not play, but the story came out, right? Yeah. Like to keep a lid on it does make none of those were good, obviously, yeah. Right? But the story came out. The fact that this is so tight-lipped, one, it leads to speculation, and two, it leads to wild speculation because you're sitting there going, "Oh my God. What could be so bad that the team doesn't want anybody to know about it?" Yep. So there's a cover-up, and he had to be shipped off. It's mind-boggling. It's crazy.
I've gone down the rabbit hole on Twitter multiple times, and it's gone different ways, every single time, because people are just like, where is it? And it's not like the Avs are just rolling and everything's fine without Nichushkin. He's such a major part of this team, and we've talked about it for the end of the season and into the playoffs. So they have to have everybody in order to make a run for the Stanley Cup. They can't afford to lose people here and there because they just don't have the depth of it. So, of course, everyone's like, well, where is Nichushkin? We need him to come back. Oh, is it something to do with the Russian government? Is it alcohol abuse? What is it? There's just so many different things. So that's why I'm like, we just need some answers. Is he back in Denver? Just give us a little bit more, Avalanche, because I'm going to be honest, I don't think they're going to win tonight. I do not think the Colorado Avalanche are going to win tonight, even with some of the best fans. I will give Ball Arena a ton of credit. It is electric every single night down there for these Avalanche games. I don't know if it's going to be enough without Kilmakar or Nichushkin out there. And I just don't know if Mikko and McKinnon can both have crazy enough games that they can walk away with a win. I hope I'm wrong, but that's just how I'm feeling today. And so far, I've been right when it came to the Avs. That's all I'm going to say.
You've had your finger on the pulse of it. Listen, I can't completely disagree with you.
Yeah.
I would put 4 things, though, on the list of why I think the Avs should win tonight.
Okay.
All right, they have the 2 best players. 2 best players on the ice tonight are wearing Avs jerseys, McKinnon and Randon.
Yep.
Kraken don't have anybody that goes into that category. They have the best goaltender, home ice, which I know in hockey has not meant squat, but it is at home, and they have the experience factor. I do think the pressure cooker of 2-2, right? This is a team that went into St. Louis last year and won Game 6 to win that series. They went to Tampa last year in the Stanley Cup final. On the road, won Game 6 to hoist the cup. Like, that's different than what the Kraken have. It's not a be-all, end-all, but if you're going to put those 4 things together, okay, I'll take the Avs tonight. But, man, am I going to, put the mortgage on it? Heck no. I'll be chewing my fingernails all night long, for sure.
I still don't think we're giving enough credit to Grubauer because he does know the ice at Ball Arena so well. One of those major things after they won was he was like, yeah, I know where the light hits and I know all these things. And we're also forgetting he's gone up against all of these top players many times, whether it was just in practice or whatever. Like, I don't think we're giving enough credit to him that he just knows this team really well. And I know there's some obviously new faces since he was here, but I still think we got to give credit where credit's due there.
And I'm not saying it is a negative to Grubauer at all, but if you made me pick tonight, hey, who do you want in net? You want Georgiev or Grubauer? I'm taking Georgiev.
Is that because of the past of what's happened with Grubauer, though?
A little bit, but listen, give me the guy who led the NHL in wins. I'll take that guy.
Okay, that's fair.
I mean, and I think he's been pretty good in this series. I mean, the other night, the shots were like 2-1, and the game went to overtime. So clearly the Avs had the better goaltender even in a loss. Again, I'm not saying Grubauer's terrible. This isn't Mike Smith with Edmonton last year where it's like, oh my gosh, you put it on net, it's going in. It ain't that at all.
Yeah.
Like that was, Kemper and Smith. This one's like here. It's relatively close. I think Grubauer's played well. I think if the Kraken advance, I think this is going to be his best series because I think the point you make about being familiar with the surroundings at Ball Arena, none of us think about the light and the glare and all those kind of things. Like, that makes a difference, and if they go play Minnesota or whoever in the next round, if they do win, he won't have that advantage. But I'll take Georgiev. I think he's been every bit of what Darcy Kemper was last year in the postseason.
Mm-hmm. If they would have scored 3 on Georgiev before Mikko went off, would you have pulled him if you were Jared Bednar?
And you're down 3-0 in that game, maybe. And it's a little bit of like, hey, just something, a spark, a change, get him off the ice, give him some rest. Like, there'd be reasons other than, man, you're playing terrible tonight.
Yeah.
He's allowed in a couple of goals. One of them, I don't remember if it was the first or second one the other night. It's like, man, you see the guy, and you should be able to make that save. That was a bad one. It would have depended what the third goal was, Rachel. If it was another one of those deflected and he had no chance, I'm probably not yanking him. One of them was that. If it was the other goal where it's like, dude, you got to pick that puck up and glove that, then I probably do. So I'm hemming and hawing a little bit because I think it's right there on the cusp. I'm
really curious because Frankie was a big part of the playoff run last year. We need to give credit where that's due. He was, and I'm curious if we're gonna see him at all if Georgiev stays healthy. Sometimes a fresh pace, like, goalies aren't always going to have their nights, and that's just the honest truth. And so I just wonder if at any point we will see Frankie in net.
I think you'll only see him in break glass in case of emergency. So the game is going poorly or Georgiev gets hurt. I think in the postseason, you've got your guy. And again, when you lead the NHL in wins, you're the guy. Mm-hmm. Now, part of that is, it's skewed a bit because with Frankie being hurt so much, Georgiev had to play a lot of games. Yeah. So that gave him more opportunities, especially late, to rack up wins. But, yeah, I don't think look, Frankie was really good last year in the postseason. He was. Mm-hmm. The 6 consecutive wins was a little skewed with, hey, you won one of those 8-6. So it wasn't exactly standing on his head. But he only played because Darcy Kemper got a stick in the eye. So I don't know that we'll see that. We'll see him unless something like that happens. That's a little bit. If you make that move for a healthy goaltender,
Yeah,
that feels a little bit like desperation to me.
that's true. I'm a big Frankie fan. I know not everybody is. I'm a
He's
big
a
Frankie
goal
fan, so I feel
hero.
like sometimes I could get a little too like, all right, things aren't going well. And again, I just think that the Kraken have absolutely dominated this series. And so I'm like, all right, let's get a change of pace or something in here, but I get the point. Superbook tonight, the spread, -1.5 for the Avs. Are you liking it?
Well, I'm sorry. I was reading Jake's text. I'm just going to be honest. What was your
What is Jake texting? I love it.
it was about what's going on with Val. Actually, it was to me and DMAC.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, we'll leave it at that. Go to denversports.com, possibly with a story, maybe. Quote
We'll
unquote.
see.
We'll see.
We're efforting it. We're efforting it. So there's some interesting things still going on in Seattle, even though the teams are here, with people trying to look into it. And yeah, yeah. Anyhow, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, well, I like it.
What was the
But it
question?
is a good way, everybody. We are trying to get more information on Val. We're not just like letting other people do it. Like we're trying really hard so you guys can have the most updated information for sure. But
Well,
of
and,
course, we gotta.
on that front, we have sister stations in Seattle. Part of them have news outlets with them, so they have more of investigative reporters. So yeah, there's certainly digging going on. If it's to be found, we will do our best to find it.
No, for sure. And of course, we just want to make sure the information is accurate too. That's the big
Correct.
thing. There's all these like misconceptions about what's going on or misinformation, but you have to make sure we have it correct. So as once we do, we promise we'll keep everybody updated on it. Like James said, eventually it's going to come out, and it's just when will it come out? But 1.5 is the line for tonight. How are you feeling about that?
I don't. Well, DMAC's right. Playoff hockey, you get a lot of pulled goaltenders late.
Sure.
I think the Avs are going to win tonight. I think it's going to be a close, low-scoring game. Could I see it being 3-2 with a minute left? They pull Grubauer and Mikko gets an empty netter to win 4-2. Yeah. So man, I'll take the Avs minus the 1.5. I'll take the puck line, but
Okay.
it's going to be that kind of late backdoor type of cover. That's how I think that would go.
Okay, so then the over and under is 6 goals. You're right on the line. Over?
Right at it. So, geez. Yeah, I mean, it's those guys in Vegas know what they're doing. Did you see last night, by the way, the Nuggets game? Oh my gosh! So I took the Timberwolves plus 10, nailed it,
Yeah.
and the under. It was a low-scoring game all night long. The line was 220.5. The final score was 112-109. That's 221 points. They get it. They're amazing. They get it within a half a point on a basketball game. It seems like more often than not. I know that it isn't, but I'm like, holy cow, how did they get it that close? But anyhow, that was a little side note.
No, it's so fascinating to me. I would, of course, everybody after the game's like, "Oh my gosh," because some people have Jamal Murray dropping stuff. It's so interesting to me that whole entire world, which that can be a conversation for another time, James.
Yeah.
But who are you expecting to show up tonight? Are we going to see the big stars? Also, to everyone that made fun of me on Twitter when I said the Stars are out tonight in Seattle the other night. No, of course I was not talking about the Dallas Stars, everybody. I was talking about the Avalanche big stars. Come on now. Stop giving me crap about it. I'm still getting DMs to this day about it.
Did you capitalize stars?
Well, I did, but like I was trying to emphasize like the Stars are
Was it
out
all
tonight.
caps?
Was it what?
Was it all caps?
No.
Well, why'd you capitalize the S? That's why people are giving you grief, Rachel.
No, Stars was completely capitalized. The entire thing wasn't. But like I emphasized Stars.
Okay, then you're right. You're right. They're wrong. They need to put a stop to it. All right. I do think the Stars are going to have to play well tonight. I think Mikko and Nathan McKinnon are going to have to show up and be good.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to fall on, okay, there's 2 defensemen that have to play well tonight, maybe 3. So it's Devon Taves. I think he's in that category.
Yep.
Well, Byram's been like kind of flirting with goals, right? He had a chance to win game 1, I think it was, with a shot that just sailed left. So maybe he finally gets one in. And hey, Sam Girard, kind of the much maligned guy. And in my mind, they chose Girard over Kadri in the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he makes his presence felt tonight. So let's go with the defenseman. Let's go with Sam Girard as the unsung hero tonight.
All right. Let's talk real quick though about Devon Taves. He's been great. I'm sorry. He really has. As for not being the big star, I think he's played really, really well in this series, and he's been really aggressive, which has been great to see.
Yep, and he's going to have to do more of that tonight. Kale McCarr's been good, but if you didn't know who was who,
Yep.
right? If they switched jerseys, you probably would say Devontae has had a better series.
Yeah, true.
So, and that's not taken away from McCarr necessarily. It's just Taves has been. I think he's been that good, and I think he'll step up. It's like who's going to play alongside him and going to fill those shoes. So I don't think Sam Girard's going to fill Cale McCarr's shoes at all, but I do think he's going to have a big moment tonight. I think he's going to give him that 3-2 lead, and then they're going to give up, and then they're going to get that late one from Miko, empty netter. If this all happens, I expect this clip to be all over social media tomorrow when the Avs win 4-2, and it's Sam Girard with the game winner and Miko with the empty netter.
Okay, sounds good. I'll even buy you a coffee, which, by the way, you still owe me a coffee. So we're going to get to that maybe tomorrow morning.
Order yet. I still need an order. I can't buy something I don't know what to buy.
Okay, tomorrow morning. I expect it delivered to my door here on Coffee Break, because tonight I know it's going to be another late night for sure. James, I do want to keep you around for just a little bit because feel like I haven't talked Broncos with you in a hot minute. But of course, the draft is coming up. But I want to talk to you actually about the week 1 schedule. Now that Aaron Rodgers is officially part of the Jets, is there a better game than Jets Broncos week 1?
Nope. I will be shocked if it's not the Monday night opener. I will be shocked because it's a little bit of the same rationale I had last year.
Yeah.
Look, I think everybody thinks those two teams will be good, but there's a decent chance one of them by week 12 is terrible. And so then it's not a very marquee game. Week 1, both those teams are going to have hype. It's Hackett coming back to Denver. It's Hackett and Rodgers. It's Sean Payton's debut. Is Russ fixed? Find me a better Monday night opener than that one.
Yep.
Adam Power Field. I will be pretty close to shocked if that's not the opening Monday night game. If the only reason it wouldn't be is because there's so much backlash about the Broncos on primetime a year ago.
Yeah.
That would be it, because just in terms of storylines, that is a fantastic Monday night opener.
Well, and I don't care what anybody says. It's still, Russell Wilson is still in the headlines. They're still talking about him despite how bad the record was last year. So I think it'd be a great Monday night matchup. Looking forward to it. I'm also looking forward to the game. James, I appreciate you hanging out with me for a little bit longer than I told you were going to be hanging out with me, but I do appreciate it.
It always flies by. I appreciate it.
All right. Okay, Andrew Mason, though, is here with us now because, of course, we have to talk about the NFL draft, which starts tomorrow. I can't even believe that. Mace, how are you this morning?
I'm doing all right, and I'm with James and you, Rachel. Give me Jets Broncos for week 1, although it may not be Monday night. It might be that late afternoon game on Sunday. They do usually try to have a spotlight game in that late afternoon window on Sunday afternoon. So it doesn't have to be prime time. I just think it's a great opener potentially. And the other thing is, I think I want to start ripping off the Band-Aid of everything from last year, right? And so if we got that game in week 1,
let's do it.
Yeah, we think of the early returns we would get in terms of figuring out what the problem was last year. Is it more Hackett or was it more Russell Wilson? And if the Jets and Aaron Rodgers come in and light up the Broncos and Wilson struggles, well, then you kind of got a big part of your answer right away. We didn't have to wait for it, right?
Oh my gosh. First of all, that's the worst thing that could possibly happen for Broncos country. Let's do predictions or whatever. Mm-hmm. If you had to guess, who wins that game right now?
I mean, you can't go much off last year because it was Brett Rippon, Zach Wilson. I think the Broncos would win a close one, but I think it would also be a low-scoring game.
Okay.
Broncos getting back to full health on defense, although, of course, no longer Evero. The Jets, the one thing they had going for themselves last year was a stout defense. We may be talking about the quarterbacks going in to a week 1 game between those teams. We might leave talking about the defenses. I think the game ends up 16-13, something like that.
Okay. Well, I'm already loving the comments. Fire Mace. Like fire, the emoji fire, not actually fire you, Mace. It's the most wonderful.
I've heard worse.
My kids and I will be rocking our Broncos gear tomorrow. That is a nightmare. Let's not have that be a reality, please. I feel that that would be, in fact, a nightmare. But Mace, the draft is coming up tomorrow. There's so much to talk about when it comes to the draft, even though I'm like, wasn't really into it. I'm not going to lie. Last week, I was kind of like, all right. But now that it's getting closer and closer, I'm like, okay, I see the potential. But there is a lot of talk, and I talked to Cecil about this yesterday, about the Broncos moving up, and it seems to really be becoming a bigger and bigger thing as we get closer and closer. I just still am not sure what the heck they could possibly give up unless it's going to be Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy to try and move up. And at that point, I'm still like, well, we're probably going to have to give away a pick too, and then it just lessens the amount of picks we have. So is there anybody really in this draft that you see that could actually potentially really have the Broncos moving up for somebody to give up again more?
Well, I mean, they've also got capital for next year as well. Now, the
True.
bridge that I think would be too far in next year's draft capital to trade would be that first round pick. But the deal that they made for Sean Payton, the Broncos sent a second round pick next year to New Orleans, but they got a third round pick back. So if you're constructing a deal where maybe you're trying to go from pick 67 to pick 50, which I think that's really where I think you're going to start talking about the Broncos realistically moving up if they
Yeah.
don't want to give up a player, is about pick 50. And that's where maybe you say, okay, pick 67, a third round pick next year, and maybe for George Payton's satisfaction, because he likes to get late round picks, maybe another seventh round pick comes back to Denver, because those are, they're basically like the 1 cent pieces, the pennies of draft currency. They're just, they're for a lot of teams, they're fairly forgettable, but George Payton does put some value on them. That's the kind of deal that I think you could make. And then if you make that deal, what type of player are you talking about? I think you may be looking, for example, at a tight end. It's a terrific tight end class. The Broncos, in that tight end room, their top 3 players, Greg Dulcich, Albert Okwuegbunam, they're pass catchers. They operate in space. Chris Manhertz, free agent that they signed back in March, he's strictly going to be someone who is mainly involved in the blocking game and is that inline tight end. But you are looking for somebody who long-term can do everything. And there's a guy that they've talked to, one of their 30 pre-draft visits. That's Luke Musgrave out of Oregon State. And he would fit that bill very well. And if he's sitting there at 50, I would not be surprised to see the Broncos move up and try to get him.
Okay, well, we're going to try something new today on Coffee Break, something we've never done today. So I was searching on Twitter this morning, and a lot of people obviously do their mock drafts. So I figured, why not grade some of these? So Mace, you're going to see on your back end, you're going to see like the participants live. If you hit live, you're going to see the actual show pop up, and then you're going to be able to see who these people have picked. So let's go through this, because I thought it was fun. I think it's so interesting that people do their own mock drafts and to see how they're kind of rolling with the punches when it comes to it. So let's do this first one.
Okay.
And they've got Joe Tipman going first at 67. How do you feel about that one?
I'd love it if he fell that far. I just don't know that he's going to fall that far. That's
Okay.
the question. I think Tipman probably ends up going somewhere toward the middle of the second round. So I don't have high hopes for him getting to that position. But if he does, I've got a theory about Wisconsin offensive linemen, and they're very well drilled. We'll see what happens the next few years, because they've changed everything this offseason. But for the last 25 to 30 years, a very consistent development program that they had. And most of the offensive linemen coming out of Wisconsin usually at least reached, if not exceeded, where they were in terms of draft value. So I think Tipman, if he were there at 67, there are a few guys where you'd say run to the podium. I think he's one of them. I think Tyjae Spears, the running back from Tulane, is another one that you'd want to run to the podium and get if they're there at that spot.
Tank Bigsby at 68.
I could see that happening. If there aren't many areas of need, but that's one of them.
Okay. Who do you like at running back? Who's your top running back?
Tyjae for the Broncos.
Yes.
For the Broncos pick, it's Tyjae Spears.
Okay.
Okay, that's the guy that I like best there. And then you get into day 3. I like I like taking a flyer on Roshan Johnson out of Texas, who is somebody. He didn't play all that much because, of course, they had Bijan Robinson there, and we know Bijan Robinson's going to go in the first round in all likelihood, barring an upset. And
Mhm.
so Rashawn Johnson's got a lot of similar attributes. He did flash pretty well down at the Senior Bowl, but he was just stuck behind a slightly better running back at the college level. But the thing is, that means there's plenty of tread left on his tires. Sometimes you get concerned about some of these running backs who have been heavily used at the college level and what they have left. Roshan Johnson's kind of the opposite case, and you could probably get him round 4 and round 5.
Okay, now we've got another mock draft that somebody did, and I'm still learning the name, so I do apologize that if I mess this one up. Devon Achani?
Johnny, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, dude, I can't see him, so you're just reading him to me. So
No, you're good. You're good. So Devon Achani?
is that the first pick off the board?
Yes, it's 67.
I'm not. I'm cool on that.
See, this is why I think it's so fascinating for people to do these mock drafts, and then of course you have the
Yeah.
experts like you come in where you're like, I don't know how exactly I feel about that one.
Yeah, and I think part of it. I mean, I'm kind of retired from the practice of grading mock drafts because like a few years ago, people were like sending them to me on Twitter all the time. I'm like, I can't do this
Exhausting.
right now. There's just it's too much of it. So,
Okay, what about Tyreek Stevenson?
the value is there
Okay.
on Tyreek Stevenson if he's sitting there at pick 67, and there's not any screaming needs on the Broncos roster right now, but you can look at any position and say they need more depth. And I think and Tyreek Stevenson, a lot of mocks have him going middle of round 2.
Mm-hmm.
I think the value is absolutely there on Tyreek Stevenson if he falls to pick 67. The only the other thing is this: he's had a couple of bad games, and it seems like for him, he sometimes appears to have trouble with having that short cornerback memory that you like. You know, okay, you get beat once, forget about it, move on. Against North Carolina in particular, they kept picking at him, and he kept getting beat. So I'm a little concerned about that. But as we saw with Damari Mathis, I mean, he was pretty. He could be grabby at times, and he had the penalty-strewn game against the Chargers, and then he rebounded pretty quick and had a good season. So these players can develop, and and if you draft Tyreek Stevenson, he's gonna get some good coaching and Christian Parker there in the secondary. So I'd be intrigued by that.
Okay, so then this was interesting too. It was a trade that had came up in somebody's draft, and it's the Giants pick 25 for the Broncos pick 67, wide receiver Cortland Sutton, and the 2024 the number 3 pick, New Orleans third pick.
Okay, yeah, that trust me when I say that deal isn't getting you to pick 25.
Yeah, really?
In reality, no. So you're basically saying 2 third-round picks in Cortland Sutton?
Yeah.
For the first round pick this year, that deal would not happen in reality. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Like it might happen on some of these simulators,
Yeah.
but Cortland Sutton does not have that degree of value because basically if you're talking about 2 threes and then Cortland Sutton to move up, like Cortland Sutton would have to have the value of basically a second round pick to move up, and he doesn't on the trade market.
What about Jerry Jeudy? Switch out Cortland Sutton, put Jerry Jeudy.
Then you're talking about something that might get that type of deal done because effectively, I think then you'd be saying 2 threes and a 2 for pick 25. At that point, the numbers start to add up. But then if you do that, if you make that type of deal, I think all of a sudden you're saying, all right, we're going to take a wide receiver here, right? You're going to take a Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee or Zay Flowers or Josh Downs, a guy I like who is who's really excellent at making people miss and runs routes really well out of North Carolina. So there are some good players there you could get. Although in my exercise of taking the best player available in the draft simulation I did, Josh Downs kept being the best player available at 67. I don't think he's going to fall that far in reality, but he did in the simulation.
Is there anything medical with him that, is making these simulators go, okay, maybe he could drop this far?
No, I think it's part of it is positional need that teams have, and this is where when you're going through this on a year by year basis, you evaluate the quality of the classes, and this is one reason why I think the Broncos may go tight end in this draft. It's a terrific tight end class, but the tight end classes have really wide variance. It's kind of like quarterbacks. Some years they're great, some years they're awful. Wide receiver, it's not an all-star class like we've seen, but it's not a bad class. But the thing is, because most classes are pretty deep at wide receiver, college football doesn't have a problem producing quality wide receivers stepping at the next level. Because of that, and because tight end I think is going to be a premium position this year, I think you're going to see a couple of quality wide receivers fall maybe into the third round, and there may be some good value there.
Okay, sounds good. Well, of course, we love that everybody can chime in the comments. That's what makes doing these live shows so fun. Brian asked, with Reisner still out there, could May see him signing back with the Broncos?
I don't see that happening. In particular, Ben Powers is basically going to be your left guard. So you'd be asking Dalton Reisner to shift over to right guard. I mean, it would be fascinating to think about, but I don't think Dalton Reisner going over to right guard is better than Quinn Miners, especially for what they're going to do this year, more power concepts. I think what the Broncos are doing schematically actually plays more into Quinn Miners' skill set than that of Dalton Reisner. Remember, when the Broncos drafted Dalton Reisner in 2019, it was Rich Scangarello who came over from San Francisco under Kyle Shanahan. Scangarello was the offensive coordinator, and they were going to to straight up a lot of the wide zone concepts, and Reisner was perceived as a better fit for that. Miners more somebody who's going to flourish in a power game. So I think it would greatly surprise me if they brought back Dalton Reisner.
Okay, sounds good. Well, Mace, I appreciate you hanging out with us. I know you're going to have all the best coverage along with Cecil for the draft at denversports.com. We will look forward to it as it gets going tomorrow. That's hard to believe. I feel like the season just ended. Here we are at the draft. It's crazy how fast it's going.
Yeah, and a month from now, we're actually going to get to see the Broncos. At some point, they have to open up, and that comes during Phase 3 of OTAs. They have to open up one day a week of Phase 3 of OTAs. So at this time a month from now, we will have seen the Broncos actually practice. Now,
yes,
how it looks and what they're doing, we'll see. But we will have seen it by this time a month from now, and I'm excited to get to that point.
The difference from last year to this year, it has been crazy for sure. All right, Andrew Mason, thank you so much. And we will bring in D-Mac for the last little bit of the show just to see if he's got any updates down at Ball Arena. My friend, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well, Rachel. Cale Makar was on the ice, but he was not made available to the media. Didn't want to talk. They didn't want him to talk. Okay. His teammates did, and they said, of course, they're disappointed he's not going to be there. Nathan McKinnon said, no, we're not galvanized. We're not rallying around the fact he's there. We wish he was there. Meanwhile, there were 3 questions asked about Valerie Nichushkin in terms of, is there any new news? No. Are you in contact with him? Yes. And does it have anything to do with legal problems? And the answer was no. And that's it. 3 questions, 3 one-word answers, and that's a wrap. Nobody can explain Bo Byram, Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen. Nobody can explain why they're having such slow starts, but they recognize that, we can't keep going here. What you see here today, and Gabriel Landeskog was on the ice with his teammates skating around out there. It's a very buttoned-up team right now, Rachel.
Yeah.
This is a gargantuan, critical game. If they're going to do anything in the season, there's a train going by. Okay. There's obviously some paranoia about revealing all the details with Nichushkin. There's no doubt that that's an element of a distraction, at least on the ice, because you have to make other adjustments to conform to it, and you're without Cale Makar, which they're not unused to because he missed a bunch of games near the end of the season.
Mhm.
But I don't know, Rachel. I don't think it's. Listen, man, I'm all for the Avs coming out and shocking the world and doing stuff, but this is not a team in a good headspace right now.
No, it's not. And I think the fan base is getting that. We're seeing a lot of panicked Avs fans. Personally, I don't think that the Avs have played all that well in the series. It's obviously tied 2-2, so I'm nervous about tonight. I'm actually going to be taking the Kraken, and I hope I'm wrong. Who do you got tonight?
I don't know how you really don't pick the Kraken.
Yeah.
All the momentum is on their side. They've started 4 games in a row with the lead. You're without Makar and Nichushkin. I don't know. I hate to say it. I don't even know what I'm saying here. You know, aside from, here comes another train. This one is quiet, though. Look at that. Look at that one. Quiet train, sort of. No, I mean, I don't know, Rach. I'll 3-2 Kraken, something like that. I just don't know where the season is going right now for the Avalanche. And I don't think they know either. They can't explain, Rachel, why they're starting so slow. It's not about effort. It's not about focus. All those excuses are gone. I think it's, sadly at this point, talent and depth. And perhaps they're just worn out, Rachel. Perhaps the leaders of this team, after a long cup run, are just at this point burned out.
Mm-hmm.
But Nathan McKinnon did say, "Yeah, I'm ready for it. They're going to double shift him. He'll play a ton. So will Mikko Rantanen. All these guys will get a ton of ice time. It's serious, now or never sort of time, and you'll see a lot of those guys on the ice tonight. You'll see a team in a desperation mode. So again, if you can't win tonight, man, I mean, you got some issues. So."
Oh, man. DMAC, I can even feel it. You even seem a different sort of energy, which obviously you're just coming out of the locker room and doing all these interviews. But I can feel the energy shift even from you. That must be what it feels like in the locker room. Like it just seems like this.
Once you get to this foolishness of like hiding guys from interviews and super secret messages about players and not just being open and honest about everything going on, that's a huge burden. It's a load of crap to deal with, frankly, Rachel. It's a load of crap.
Yeah.
And some of it isn't on them. I mean, you got Kale got suspended, but Kale got suspended because he did something dumb. Okay? He did. And he didn't need to do it, and he did it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll see.
So.
Of course, both DMAC and I will be down there at Ball Arena tonight, and in the Sports Office vlog will be coming for you guys, so definitely stay tuned. DMAC, thank you for giving us a little bit of information at the end of the show. We appreciate you hopping on. Huge shout out to James, Jake, and Mace as well, and to everybody in the comments. We appreciate you every single day. Let us know who you're taking for tonight's game, and we'll see you tomorrow morning to break down, hopefully, an Avalanche win. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye, everybody.